The name Orion Hall meant nothing to Lisa, but following her aunt's mysterious summons, she hurried from her ancient, quiet home in Vermont to the ancient, legend-steeped castle in Cyprus. There she met Demetrius, the strong, dark, classically handsome young Greek. And there was Michael, the uninhibited archaeologist, with a temperament and temper so much like her own. Both men told her tales of the castle and its legends. At first Lisa was enchanted, but then she knew that one of them was trying to destroy her. With the help of a shrouded figure from the past who waited in the night. So, today, my friends, we're going to be reading a very interesting novel. An old novel that I have read many, many years ago. And then somewhere in the 1990s, I believe. This book, my friend, The Mistress of Orion Hall. As you can see, it's worn out, it's beaten up. Has been written in the year 1970. So many, many, many years ago, right? I'm hoping you guys can hear me well. So if you're ready for this book, if you're ready for this reading, let's begin. I feel like something is beginning for you. So chapter 1. The world was are you at a loss of words, my friend? The world was so made that certain signs come before certain events. Cicero. This is a quote by Cicero. Yes, certainly that is the truth. Okay, so you may have been seeing a lot of signs that something is about to begin for you. So let's begin this book. The mistress of Orion Hall was dead. In the hanging hours of the night, they killed her. While the sea moaned and flung itself against the land, she was slain. While the clouds hurried to hide the face of the moon, and the night owls covered the yellow eyes with brown feathered wings, the mistress of Orion Hall was slain. While the night sounds crept and crawled, it was done. But that was long ago. Or was it only yesterday? The ash-gray fog had shrouded the night when she was killed. In the chill damp of the dark, she had gone out to prowl the blackest shadows of the night, and death had finally met her to claim its reward. Before the Timmy blew from the north to tear away the veil of fog, it was over. And the mistress of Orion Hall was dead. But that was long ago. Or was it only yesterday? It masked and shrouded hoods, they came for her, trembling as they heard her laughter wild and terrible as an eagle's scream. But there was no turning back, or they would be lost forever. And so her killers pressed on, till the moment came and she lay dead. Only then did they recognize that in death she had cheated them of their victory, and they fled into the darkness, sick with horror for themselves and for those yet to come. When she was killed, it is said, the pomegranates turned bitter, the ripe black olives shriveled and fell from the branches, and the fruit of the lemon trees turned brown. The clouds held the moon for 21 nights, and the seabirds wailed continuously for 101 days. But to some that was long, long ago. To those touched by it, it was only yesterday. Sometimes yesterday can be just so much ancient history, especially when you've just turned 22. When you're thoroughly and completely tingling with excitement and the world is popping open all around you, like so many champagne corks. At least that's how it seemed to Lisa Bowen as she swung down from the big red London bus and began to walk slowly across Trafalgar Square towards the hotel. Wearing her own very mini red dress, Lisa was continuous of the admiring glances, glad of her ability to hold her own with the long-steamed English girls. She had spent many of the day sightseeing and pinching herself to make certain it wasn't all a dream. She'd arrived in London a day early, and now she tried to sort out the nearly unbelievable rush of events of the past 48 hours. First, of course, there had been the cablegram from Maggie. It had burst upon the quiet of the little white house in Middlebury, Vermont, with the force of a small nuclear blast. Maggie was really her Aunt Margaret, but she's always been just Maggie to Lisa. And now the girl saw herself reading the wire aloud, her mother standing across the kitchen table from her. Dear Lisa, big things afoot. Need someone who knows Greek. Why go elsewhere when best Greek honor student at Bennington was my own niece? Pack at once. It's like, get ready. Meet me Hotel Excelsior, London. Am writing money for plane fare. Am wiring money for plane fare. Will explain when I see you. Love, Maggie. Lisa recalled how her mother had been almost as excited as she. Since Daddy had died a little less than a year ago, it had been a quiet house, and her mother had urged Lisa to take a trip and get away. But there's been a lot of unpaid debts, the entire estate to work on, and it just hadn't seemed the right time. And now this wonderful wire from Maggie. I wonder what it's all about, her mother had said, helping her pack. I don't much care, Lisa had laughed. It'll be exciting and wonderful, whatever it is. The scene faded from her mind as she passed through the lobby doors of the hotel. A pause at the desk brought the news that Miss Margaret Simpson of Sussex had indeed arrived and was in room 1601. Lisa hurried to catch the elevator just before the old-fashioned, ornate grille door closed. The lift, as the English always called them, was maddeningly slow in its ascent. Lisa was excited at the thought of seeing Maggie again. Aunt Margaret used to visit the family in Vermont twice a year without unfailing regularity. Lisa was a little girl growing up then, and there was always breathlessly exciting talk of London, Paris, Geneva, of other worlds she had only met in her school geography books. But as the years went on, the visits grew less frequent and finally stopped altogether. But Maggie's wonderful letters kept coming, letters that were warm and witty and wise. She was one of those people who wrote letters just as she spoke, and her sweeping personality leaped from the pages. The lift halted and two men got in. Lisa smiled inwardly as their eyes paused to take in her beauty. Maggie would be surprised at her slim, grown-up loveliness, she knew. The last time Maggie had seen her, she was young, leggy, preteen, shooting out and up in all directions, uncoordinated as a baby colt. Her heart began to pound again as she thought of how so much had happened so quickly, and she heard her mother's parting comment at the airport. "Aren't you glad now that you got Greek as a second language in school?" Her mother had laughed, and Lisa had nodded vigorously. It had really been an offhand choice, almost as a lark, because her father's grandmother had been half Greek. But she recalled it had fallen easily to her tongue, amazingly easily. And she had enjoyed every bit of her Greek studies, all the things so many others found heavy. It had all come smoothly to her, the language, the culture, the history, their dark Greek dramas of Sophocles and Euripides, the bright comedies of Menander and Aristophanes. She'd won honors and starred every year in the Bennington Greek Drama Society productions. With her dark brown eyes, the thin nose, partition and elegant, her way of carrying herself with a kind of profound serenity, she made an ideal heroine. Then she wore her hair long and hanging full instead of, in her unusual manner, pulled back in a semi-ponytail, or combed upwards in back as it was now. And now, as she thought back, now it was all of real, practical importance to her. It was indeed a fun new world, full of totally unexpected things. Like the man outside the front door of the hotel, when she arrived yesterday, dressed in a short jacket and high black boots. His eyes were deep caverns in a lined face, and he had stared at her as though he couldn't believe what he saw. Though she'd never set eyes on him before in her life, it gave her a strange sensation. Not fright, not even uneasiness, but wonder. She'd remembered that lined, craggy face, but she dismissed the incident quickly. A totally unexpected adventure should have unexpected pieces in it. Wow. The lift stopped at the 16th floor and she stepped out, feeling the eyes of the man in the car follow the rounded, upturned line of her breasts. She followed down the hall and quickly found room 6001. Maggie answered the door, paused for a long moment, and then gathered the girl in her arms in warm, encompassing the light. After crushing Lisa to her, the older woman pushed the girl back at arm's length and surveyed her. "My God, but you've grown into something lovely," Maggie said. Lisa laughed appropriately. Maggie looked older than she'd remember her. That was to be expected. There was tiredness about her aunt's face, a weariness that had set in. She was still a commanding woman, though, a big, regal lady with that difficult-to-define quality called presence. When Maggie entered a room, one knew she was there. It was Lisa knew, the kind of thing that resulted from a combination of circumstances, a certain natural quality, a background of breeding and wealth, a life devoted to position and comforts. Maggie gestured to a couch in a hotel room and Lisa sat down. Her aunt produced a bottle of sherry from a suitcase and was pouring 2 small glasses. She handed one to Lisa and raised hers in a toast. "To the new Mistress of Orion Hall," she said. "Does that mean anything to you at all to you, my dear?" Lisa frowned, and her mind plunged backwards to pick up bits and snippets of family talk she had heard over the years. "I think so," she said tentatively. "Isn't that the old house that's been in the family for 100 years or more?" "That's right, my dear," Maggie said. "Unused, untouched, practically forgotten for years." "And that's an island somewhere. That's on an island somewhere, right?" Lisa asked, feeling excitement growing inside her. "On the island of Cyprus," Maggie said. "I'll tell you all about it, or at least all I know, seeing as I can't really do what I want to do without your help, in more ways than one." Maggie poured another sherry for Lisa and herself and settled back on the couch. "I've decided to open up Orion Hall," she said, "to go there and live out the rest of my days." Lisa kept her eyebrows from rising, but she couldn't help but wonder at this decision. "I've heard that Cyprus in the eastern Mediterranean is a delightful island," Maggie said. "Slow-moving, wonderful climate, a thoroughly leisurely place," Lisa nodded, but her aunt's words did not satisfy her as an explanation. "Orion Hall had been shrouded in legend," Maggie continued. "I've heard all sorts of half stories, but the only hard facts I've been able to gather I've gotten from going over old deeds and family papers. It was built by your great-grandfather on your father's side, Richard Willis, for the Greek girl he married. He was a wealthy young man, a student on the island of Rhodes in the Aegeans, when he met this girl, Athena. It seems he fell in love with her and married her at once. She wanted him to build a house for her on Cyprus, and he built Orion Hall. They lived there for a time, and then he died very suddenly. According to what I've learned, Athena stayed on as Mistress of Orion Hall until she was killed in an accident of some kind a good number of years later. But before Richard Willis died, there was a child. She was sent to England to live to be educated. From England, she went to America and never set foot on Cyprus again." "That would be Grandmother Willis," Lisa interjected, pulling on her memory of family talk again. "Exactly," Maggie said. "She was alive in America and never looked backwards, it seemed." After Athena, the last mistress of Orion Hall and the only one, was killed in the accident, the house remained unoccupied. From what I've been able to gather, Richard Willis was somewhat of a family black sheep, and nobody wanted any part of the place. Then there were the wars that followed, which kept my part of the family busy for jolly old England, in India, Burma, Europe, and all over the world. In most recent times, Cyprus revolted for independence and developed quite an anti-British atmosphere. It was a sticky business, and, of course, no one wanted to go there then. But that's all over now. Cyprus is an independent state, and the old papers were amassed on my side of the family, probably because my uncle Harold was executed for the family. A month ago, when I made my decision to go there and become the new tenant, I put all the old papers in some sort of order. Now, in actuality, you are genealogically the remaining blood descendant of the Mistress of Orion Hall, Lisa." "Me?" Lisa frowned. Maggie nodded. And your mother, of course, she added. But as you are the last descendant, I'm told that to keep everything legal and proper, you have to sign these papers allowing me to take over Orion Hall and live there. Maggie reached behind to a table and picked up a briefcase. She took a sheaf of legal-looking papers from it and handed them to the girl. They're drawn so that when I'm gone to Orion Hall, we will automatically go back to you, my dear. Lisa found her pen in her purse and signed the papers without a second look at them. It gave her a warm, satisfying feeling to be able to do something for Maggie, to partially repay all those years of visits and griefs. She handed them back to the older woman. Thank you, my dear, Maggie simply said. I think it's wonderful and exciting of you to include me in all this, Lisa said with sincerity, her brown eyes sparkling. You'll earn every minute of it, Maggie laughed. I'll need you to translate for me and to teach me enough Greek so someday I can get around on my own. Though Cyprus is an independent state, it is basically Greek. The population is about 85% Greek. The other 15% is primarily Turkish. And like all the Greek islands, it is more Greek than Greece. More insulated, more steeped in tradition and superstition. Maggie suddenly cast a glance at her watch and rose abruptly, draining her sherry. That lawyer fellow, she said, a grim, angry tone creeping into her voice. I've got to get across town and I want you to come with me. Trouble? Lisa asked and was sorry she'd been so quick to intrude, but Maggie only snorted. Not really, she said. Just some rather fast operators, I suspect. Orion Hall is at one end of a small village called Caramania, and I was informed that local law requires a notice of independent residency to be given, especially in the case of foreigners. I sent notice off to the mayor of the village. Since then, I've received 4 crude letters, unsigned, warning me not to come to Orion Hall. Then last week, I received a letter from a barrister here in London, a Mr. Al Burton. His letter claims he has a client who put a down payment on Orion Hall, and this was in order because of unpaid back taxes on the place. He suggests I wait 6 months before proceeding with any residency plans because his client will be away till then. And you think that's all in error? Lisa asked. It's more than an error, Maggie snapped. This lawyer fellow's approach is just a more clever variation of the 4 crude anonymous letters. I dare say some smart operators have been working some kind of racket, probably renting out rooms in Orion Hall to tourists. Naturally, my going to live there will end what is undoubtedly a lucrative little sideline. But that is precisely what I intend to do. Lisa got up and followed Maggie as she swept out of the room and into the hall. The elevator was just coming down and they caught it and were out on the street in moments. Maggie took a small card from her purse. This was attached to the letter, she said, waving down a high-roofed London cab with tall windows. 12 Dexter Street, Maggie commanded. Lisa enjoyed London as they rode across the city, and Maggie seemed occupied with her own thoughts. Lisa cast quick glances at the older woman and detected that faint, wary expression lurking just behind her eyes. Or was it worry? No, she decided, it was more of a kind of sadness. Probably Maggie was sad at leaving old friends and her beloved England. But why go then, she wondered again. There was an unquestionable sadness in the woman's eyes when, in moments of repulse like this, the bright twinkle of her personality rested. Lisa turned away. It had always been too easy for her to plunge into melancholy. That's the Greek in you, her father would say when someone else's sadness reached out to wrap itself around her. The girl was glad to feel the taxi come to a halt. She swung long, smooth legs out of the door, legs that caused two workmen repairing a street lamp to stop and watch. This was the East End section of London, a part of it she hadn't seen and didn't want to see again. It hadn't the angry vitality of an American slum. It was just steeped in grayness, a bleak, numbing sort of place with stone houses that clanked to each other defensively in steep rows. Maggie was looking up at a ground floor window, a dirty, grimy window, and Lisa saw the lawyer's card stuck in one corner. Hardly one of the Queen's barristers, Mr. Alberton, Maggie sighed dryly. Let's have her over with, shall we? Lisa drew up behind her aunt as they mounted the few steps and rang a painfully loud bell. Someone buzzed back and the door opened. They entered a dingy, dark hallway of old wallpaper and dark, unpolished woodwork. A small man, olive skin with darting brown eyes and a ferret-like face, waved them into a ground-floor office, poorly lighted, perhaps to hide the general shoddiness of it. Maggie sat down in a chair before a small desk. Lisa perched on a straight-back chair near her aunt. The little man's eyes were shrewd and cold, with a flat, deadly quality to them despite their brightness. She almost felt her skin crawl as his eyes lingered on her, taking in her beauty. It was like being gone over by a snake. Maggie began things in her unusual, abrupt, imperious way. She opened the briefcase and drew out a sheaf of papers and waved them in the lawyer's face. Your client, my good man, if he really exists and if he has indeed put a down payment on Orion Hall, has been very much misled, Maggie said, her tone clipped, impatient. These papers record the tax payments made on Orion Hall over the past 20 years. There is no tax liability unpaid, and your client has no claims whatsoever. Mr. Burton shrugged and didn't seem to be at all bothered. He tried a small, coldly mechanical smile. I did not handle those negotiations, he said. I have only been retained recently and can only state what I was told. I am also informed that the place is virtually without water and that the old wells have dried up. It is in terrible need of repair too. Maggie's eyes peered the little man. The Willis estate paid a family in the village to maintain general repairs over the years. A sum was paid them yearly, and as the last member of the family died only 2 years ago, I doubt that the place is in terrible condition. Maggie stood up and tossed the papers on the man's desk, giving him a withering glance of contempt at the same time. I don't know what your little game is, or who put you up to it, but I don't expect any further rubbish from you, she snapped. Those are photostatic copies of the tax payments, just on the off chance that you should have credit of a client. Wow. Turning abruptly, Maggie was half out the door before Lisa hurriedly caught up with her. Lisa shot a fast glance at the little man and saw the cold glitter of his narrowed eyes, the cruelty in the tight line of his mouth. She hurried after Maggie, glad to find herself out on the street. Of course, they had nothing to lose by trying, Maggie said. Perhaps someone else might have been scared off by annoying letters and lawyers' talk of options and unpaid taxes. But they had the wrong person in Maggie Simpson. Maggie was certain the thing was done with over nothing but a minor attempt at small-time chicanery. But Lisa felt there had been something lately deadly in the lawyer. She still held the image of the little man's eyes inside her mind, and she had an unexplained cold feeling of danger. Yet she shook it away. She refused to be a victim of silly imaginings. "We'll go back to the hotel and wash him away with some good wine over dinner," Maggie said. "Whatever he is, I'm sure his name is not Mr. Alberton. The man's an Arab, if I ever saw one, or possibly an Egyptian." "You sound so certain," Lisa said. "You forget I spent every winter in Morocco for 5 years," Maggie said. "You get to know the types. Alberton, indeed. I'd say his name was more like El Bobotani or some such thing." Lisa laughed along with her aunt, and they got another high-roofed cab back to the hotel. Over dinner, Lisa learned that they would fly to Athens in the morning. Then they would leave from Piraeus, the seaport of Athens, go to the boat to Cyprus and land at the harbor port of Kyrenia. Even the good, thick roast beef and a fine bottle of Chambertin Burgundy couldn't dull the edge of the mountaining excitement inside her. When the long, leisurely dinner was over and she was back in her room, she drew a hot bath and relaxed in it. As the warmth of the water curled around her, Lisa reflected that she would be about the luckiest girl in the world. Not that she'd had a hard life. There had been a few lean years, but her father had always managed to provide for the family, and she had been given ample material advantages such as the years at college. More important, she had known the good things of love and the wisdom of security. Love. The word revolved in her mind. There had always been ardent and eager young men, and she stretched, cat-like, savoring the warmth of her memories. Love had always been something of a problem to her, a problem of her own making. It was her nature to respond openly, freely, trustingly, to involve herself with other people's needs, but she learned not to give so fully of herself, physically and emotionally. It had been hard learning. It had taken a lot of hurts to realize that giving is too often a one-way street. And so she had learned to hold back, a little anyway. But she was still vulnerable to stray cats, to those who used needing as a weapon. And she admitted to herself she was still an incurable romanticist, helplessly drawn by the pleasures and pains of the emotions. That, too, her father used to say, was the Greek in her. That inclinations towards the tragic in happiness, the darkness inside the light. But she had always held that it was merely the result of being a small-town girl. Even going to college at Bennington hadn't taken her out of Vermont. Dreams of faraway places and exciting adventures had been no more than that, lived vicariously through Maggie's visits. When Lisa was a little girl and through her letters afterwards. And now she was doing those very things she come to be sure would never be more than dreams. Lisa got out of the bath, drying herself slowly, luxuriating in the sensuous of her lovely body. Wrapping a towel around her, she went to bed, still marveling at how completely life had turned around for her in the last few days. She wanted to sleep, to hurry the coming day. In the morning, Lisa was up early, putting on a MacLeod tartan mini kilt and a soft yellow jersey blouse. She went to Maggie's room and found her aunt also packed and ready to go. "I'll be glad to be settled and secured again," Maggie said over the coffee, and once more Lisa wondered what the remark, almost absently-mindedly tossed out, really meant. She had always thought of Maggie as secure and settled. She felt her aunt's hand pressed down over hers, and she looked up to see Maggie's eyes, grave and warm, looking at her. "I'm so very glad you could come with me on this venture, my dear," Maggie said. "You don't know what a comfort you've already been, and you'll be more of one, I know." Lisa smiled back at Felt Good. It was almost strange to think of herself as being a comfort to Maggie. Her aunt wasn't one of those women who ever seemed to need comforting. She always seemed in charge of herself and everything around her. And in truth, she most always was. But Lisa was learning. There are few people so self-contained and to be without need of human companionship and understanding. Time prevented further reflection as Maggie hurried them both through breakfast, and they gathered their bags to the trip to the airport. The flight itself from London to Athens was uneventful and thoroughly routine. It was only when they hurried through Athens to Piraeus and to the little dock overcrowded with people that Lisa began to get the taste and smell and feel of her destination. There were many women on the dock, mostly in black kerchiefs and shawls, carrying burlap traveling bags, some with small chickens in wooden boxes. The women were short, for the most part, without makeup, their faces severe, unsmiling. The dock was almost awash with tears, and there was much loud wailing and fervent embracing. Lisa saw a smattering of students with some men, stare-faced in work clothes with short-brimmed caps. The steamer itself was small, old, and definitely no tourist boat. Later Lisa learned it was the only steamer to the island. They pushed their way through the crowd to rest their bags near the gangplank. Overhead, a cargo crane on the forward deck of the ship was still swinging huge nets filled with crates and heavy machinery from the dock into the open hatches. Lisa watched it as it swung slowly over the crowded dock, a giant claw of rope with its contents inside. Her eyes moved from the crane to sweep the dock, and she frowned. There on the far side was the cavernous-eyed man with the gaunt-lined face she had seen outside the hotel that first day she arrived. Or was it the same man? He wore the same high boots and short dark jacket, and she thought she would never mistake those burning deep eyes. But there were other men with high shiny boots, their faces also lined, their hair black and curly too. She couldn't really be sure, and she looked away. Many of the people were starting to go on board when she saw the gypsy woman in a corner of the pier, sitting before a canvas with a huge eye painted on it. A small knot of people gathered around her. She sat on a pile of old matting and turned cards over for some, looked at the palm of others, and just mirrored to a few. "Do you have time for me to have my fortune told?" Lisa asked Maggie, pressing her hand on the older woman's arms. "I've always wanted to have it done by a real gypsy." "She's real enough," Maggie said. "Probably a lot more real than her cackling fortunes." "I've just got to talk to her," Lisa said excitedly, elbowing her way towards the woman. The gypsy woman wore a red bandana that only partially covered jet black hair. She had on a scoop-necked red silk blouse that lay flat against huge, ponderous breasts. Her face was both aged and ageless, old when she smiled old when she smiled an uneven smile, surprisingly young when she studied the cards that lay in the lap of her white skirt. Her skin was olive hued, the cheeks smooth, but her eyes were surrounded by hundreds of tiny wrinkles. Of course, she'll see me as a tourist, Lisa told herself. She'll trot out her most shop-worn routines, but I don't care, she thought. This was something Lisa had always wanted to do, ever since the days when she used to go to the fake gypsies that traveled with the small backwoods circuses in the rural Vermont areas. An old woman moved away, and Lisa found herself standing behind a short, white-haired man who was next in line. The gypsy woman muttered some words to the old man, and he moved on. The woman gazed at Lisa from behind. Half-veiled eyes that traveled up and down her figure. Lisa dropped a few coins into the woman's lap as she had seen others do. The gypsy woman continued to stare at her through half-lowered lids. "Do you have any wisdom for me?" Lisa asked. "You go to Kyrenia," the gypsy said, and Lisa frowned. How did the woman know that? The ship made other stops. "I guess, no doubt," she answered herself. "Most tourists stop there, probably." "I will sing you a song," the gypsy woman said, "an old Turkish song." She began to sing, her voice soft, steady, with almost a lullaby quality to it. The singing was more a cadescended speaking with measured changes of pitch, and there was a strange edge inside the softness of it. "If you should go to Kyrenia, don't enter the walls. If you should enter the walls, don't stay long. If you should stay long, don't get married. If you should get married, don't have children." She stopped as suddenly as she began and turned away. Lisa felt a coldness in the pit of her stomach. She watched the gypsy woman disappear behind the canvas with the big eyes on it, and she turned away. This song had been slight, strange, and yet seemed to say more than the words itself said. It was a warning, a verse of hidden meanings, and it lay curled up inside her like some unwelcome bit of food, leaving a sour taste in her mouth. The crowd on the dock had thinned, and now, as she saw Maggie standing beside the bags near the gangplank, as she started toward her end, she saw the big cargo boom swing directly over Maggie, moving slowly. As she looked up at it, Lisa's eyes widened in horror. One end of the net was pulling loose. Inside, the heavy metal crate shifted, about to spill out as she stood transfixed watching it. The end of the net came apart and the heavy crate started to fall. It had unreal, slow motion, picture quality to it. Lisa screamed and Maggie turned to her, startled. The girl dived, catching the older woman about the waist, knocking her backwards and falling along with her. As they hit the wooden plank of the dock, she heard and felt the thundering crash of the heavy crate as it smashed down on the spot where Maggie had been standing a second before. The dog trembled and then was still, and in moments other hands were helping them both to their feet. Crewmen had dashed from the ship, and the captain was there too, his face dark with concern. Lisa also looked at Maggie with concern. It had been a hard fall, but the older woman was all right, merely shaken up a little. "Thanks would sound so damned inadequate, my child," Maggie said, huffing herself up, straightening her dress. "I'll have to find some other way." But Maggie's eyes had held their gratitude, and the incident passed over as the captain escorted them both up to their cabins, murmuring about fate and accidents. It had been one of those freak things that happened every once in a while, he explained, and it was the only logical, plausible explanation. Lisa wondered why she felt so unsatisfied by it. It was the gypsy woman's strange song still with her, unsettling and unraveling, she decided. In any case, no one had been killed or even injured, and the captain had insisted they dine at his table for the evening meal, so all had turned out for the best. It was later, when she'd gotten settled into her cabin adjoining Maggie's, that she went to her aunt and spoke again of the near tragedy. A thing like that couldn't have happened on purpose, do you think, Maggie? She asked. Maggie glanced at her with a tolerant frown. Now, what in heaven makes you even think of something like that? Maggie asked. Really? Now, my child. I don't know, Lisa shrugged. I was just thinking about those anonymous warning letters you got and that Mr. Burton and someone not wanting you to go to Orion Hall. My, you do have an active imagination, don't you? Maggie laughed. Lisa was glad she hadn't mentioned the man with the deep, cavernous eyes. She was already feeling ashamed of being so imaginative. Maggie's arm was around her shoulders, steering her out onto the deck. Let's go out and watch the ship sail, she said. One thing you can't do on Cyprus is let your imagination run away with you, I'm told. The place is full of legends and superstitions anyways. Accidents are accidents. Nobody can explain the strange workings of fate and why they happen to some people and not to others. I say let's just forget about the whole thing. It seemed to be a good idea. They stood by the rail as the little steamer pulled away from the dock. The blue waters of the Aegean sparkled as the little vessel began to nose its way through the waters once sailed by the ships of the Persian kings and Macedonian warriors. Lisa put aside thoughts of accidents and strange songs of gypsy women. It was better.